want to be seen? Doesn't matter. Unless it wasn't. I'll add you in once I do my intro.
Hi, Joe Simpson. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Barbara.
Goodness.
I used to having 2 people here.
It's got a lot less water. It's got no water in it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just giving everybody a couple minutes to get on. Glare on the screen, but I don't think that's a big deal. The ice keeps dropping. Okay, so I got a bug zapper, refrigerator. All the TVs are plugged in, they're not running. Ice maker's running. Computer's running, phones being charged. All this stuff. Start. All right, welcome everyone to our educational Zoom meeting for the National Ski Council Federation. I am Lisa Baregi, the education chair, if no one knows me. And I am glad to welcome you. I have a couple of housekeeping things I'd like to tell you. One, if you will all mute yourselves, and that way the presentation won't be interrupted by background sounds. 2, if you're on a computer and can chat, if you will put questions into the chat as you have them, we will be addressing them potentially as they come along. And if you don't get addressed during the presentation, we will have a question and answer session at the end, so you can we'll come back to it. Also, if you're on a phone and not on a computer and can't chat, hold all of your questions until the end if you would. With that, I would like to turn over to James Mershon. He is with the Texas Ski Council, and James offered to be on the Education Committee, and I gladly accepted to have some help and have someone else work on some of the presentations as we're trying to do more of them for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to him to tell you about tonight's presentation. Thank you all for joining us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I thought I was voluntold, not asked, but we'll let that go at that. What we're going to take a look at tonight is travel insurance in today's travel environment. And I've been privileged to have some conversations and work with Mary Alsler with Travel Protectors and Courtney Barrett and Grant Hayes with IMG Global, industry professionals that are going to help us with the
James, you went on mute.
Did you get any of that, or do I need to start over?
Start over after the introductions.
Okay. Well, all right. Sorry, I'm James Mershon, and Lisa and I had talked about me doing some work for the Federation. It's been a while, so I didn't mind. This evening's presentation is going to be over travel insurance in today's volatile travel environment. And as I was saying, I've been privileged to have an opportunity to work with Myra Alsler with Travel Protectors and with Courtney Barrett and Grant Hayes with IMG Global, some industry professionals that are going to help us through the presentation this evening. So Myra is going to conduct the PowerPoint. My understanding is if you have some questions, we're going to use the participant chat questions, and we'll get to those as we go through the presentation. And then we'll have a Q&A after the fact. So I hope you guys get some worthwhile information out of this. And please welcome our industry professionals. Myra.
Courtney, aren't you doing it, not me? Yeah, okay.
I was going to allow you to, I'm sorry. I was going to allow you to introduce and give a little spew about yourself and who you are.
Oh, that's
I'm
great.
sorry.
Oh, I can do that.
Okay, go ahead. Introduce yourselves, and then we'll drop over here to Courtney and let her do the presentation. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I'm Myra, last name Altschuler, if you can manage that. And I own a small company called Travel Protectors in Northern Virginia. And I've been working in the travel insurance business for about 25 years and working with ski clubs, not only ski clubs, I work with all groups, individuals who travel on vacation or in groups. And what I do is I'm a broker. So I can sell different products, and I also sell IMG. I sell a whole bunch of different products that fit your needs. And that's what I do.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Grant Hayes. I'm the International Sales, Global Sales Manager for Travel Insurance for IMG International Medical Group based here in Indianapolis. So I oversee about 8 different segments that sell travel insurance, from lodging to mission to marine to travel agency to groups. So Courtney is somebody that I rely heavily on. I joined IMG in October. Before that, I was with a travel supplier company called Hotel Beds, but I have over 20 years of experience in travel insurance. So happy to participate. Glad we can be a resource for us or for you. And again, Myra and Courtney and I are here to help. If we can't answer your questions tonight, we'll definitely get back to you in those answers. So, Courtney.
Thank you, Grant. Courtney, sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion there. So Courtney Baird, like I said, she'll be going through the PowerPoint presentation for us. Courtney, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney Baird. I am the manager of travel account services team for International Medical Group, IMG. I have actually spent my entire travel insurance career at IMG. I started 18 years ago, way back when, as a call center rep, and since have held a variety of roles throughout the company. I worked assistants, I paid claims for about 10 years, I eventually going on to oversee the entire operations team for the iTravel Insured product that we have, which is our travel insurance specific product. And now I'm currently in sales, helping to support our VIP clients. So thank everybody, first of all, for taking the time. I know we're all busy, and it's hard to carve out an hour, let alone a couple, to be able to go through these presentations and learn about things that people typically aren't very interested in hearing about, namely insurance. Can you guys all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Everybody good? Okay. So really what we wanted to do was just give a super high level overview of, about travel insurance and maybe some differences on how it is for regular insurance and, some of the reasons that it's important to get it. So one of the things, like I said, during my history in assistance, dealing with some of the calls where people are contacting you when things go wrong on their vacation, I've really seen sort of the best of what can go wrong and the worst of what can go wrong, so to speak. And some of what we've got here, like I said, we want to highlight the need for travel insurance. Well, everybody knows travel isn't cheap, especially now. And there's always something, even the best laid plans, nearly something always goes wrong. You hope that the thing that goes wrong is just something as mundane as you forgot your toothbrush, but you want to have travel insurance in case something serious does happen, particularly if you've got people that are traveling to remote areas where maybe there's not adequate medical care and things of that nature. If you break your leg and there's not a facility within 500 miles that can take care of your leg, what are you going to do in that situation? So that's kind of what we wanted to highlight in terms of reasons that you should purchase insurance. And it's not necessarily just your big catastrophic medical situations. It can be something as simple as your flight got canceled on your way home due to weather, and the airline's not going to put you up in a hotel. So you know what? You might have a benefit on your policy that would reimburse for some of those additional expenses that you hadn't anticipated. Or maybe you get to your destination, your bags don't. So there's policies that have benefits that would reimburse to at least help you get clothing, toiletries, and things of that nature to help you continue on with your trip. And I kind of touched on some of those. The bulk of the benefits with respect to travel insurance, I think, unless you're talking a medical only plan, is going to be trip cancellation. I think for most travel insurance products that offer a trip cancellation benefit, I think it makes up about 80% or so of their claim volume. So this is, people that have booked a trip, potentially a very expensive trip at a resort or with a cruise line, or maybe a mountain climbing adventure. It could be, any one of those things. And if, say, for example, they're training for a marathon and they break their ankle and they can't go on their trip, they've got the potential to lose a very significant investment, particularly in this day and age, because like I said, a lot of travel suppliers, they may not be willing to, if you're canceling the day before your trip, they're not necessarily going to be willing to give any of that money back because, they are going to charge some sort of cancellation fee or a penalty for canceling your booking. So cancellation would really probably be the number one reason that you'd want to buy it. And for most travel insurance plans, and we'll get into some of this a little bit later, but most of them are pretty set in that they have different reasons that they would consider covered or reimbursable events, such as the most common is going to be, an illness to one of the travelers. But again, it's not just cancellation, it's all the stuff that can go wrong once you leave on your trip. So trip delay, that's actually a pretty common, popular benefit, thanks to this little thing some of you may have heard of called COVID-19. So, when people, it's nice that they've since relaxed some of the restrictions, but one, depending on where you're traveling, they may not be relaxed everywhere. And, it's kind of one of those situations where if somebody tests positive for COVID, everything stops until they don't test positive for COVID anymore. So that trip delay benefit is going to come in handy if somebody stuck a few extra days at a destination and they're incurring those hotel expenses, those meal expenses, and things of that nature. That trip delay benefit is going to help pick up that expense for you as well as your traveling companions. And then, like I said, worst case scenario, you've got accident and sickness. So if you do get hurt while you're on your trip, you're going to have coverage. And we'll get into, again, a little bit later on why that might be important. Most people say, I've got medical insurance, but that's not necessarily the case while you're traveling. Then again, you've also got your baggage and your personal effects benefit, which is interesting because some insurances, some homeowners insurances might offer coverage for baggage benefits, but they're typically very exclusive in such that they may not cover things that most people tend to carry with them on trips, like electronics, cell phones, things of that nature. So it's really important to, make sure that you're buying a policy to cover the things that you're most worried about. I mean, nothing worse than going on vacation and, you've already got to deal with the fact that you've lost your bag, but then the fact that, you might only get $100 for the contents of your entire bag from the airline. That doesn't really make anybody happy. So just a couple of odds and ends, good reasons why it's nice to have travel insurance. And I will be the first to say that when I started IMG 18 years ago, I had never purchased a travel insurance policy in my life. And with all the horror stories, so to speak, that I've heard over the years, I don't even think I'd travel across the country without it. So again, kind of asking yourself or your clients the question, is travel insurance going to be worth it? So, the big thing is really to make sure that you know what you're purchasing. You want to make sure that if you're traveling to Mexico, that you've got insurance that covers you while you're in Mexico. To that second bullet point there, talking about just domestic medical insurance, most of those plans do not cover you once you set foot outside the United States. So, or they offer extremely limited benefits and coverage for you. So, and most people don't know that. They just assume, oh, I've got, insurance, I'm going to be covered. Or even worse, if you've got insurance, but the deductible is so high, it's like not having insurance at all. And then, even if you do have something that would be covered under, say, your domestic plan, it's still going to be a pretty significant out-of-pocket expense. Whereas, many travel insurance plans will come in and pick that up or pick up the balances that might not be eligible to be reimbursed through your primary medical insurance. And, most medical insurance companies, the other thing that they don't include is medical evacuation insurance. So again, if you're traveling in a remote area and you get injured or you fall ill and you need a higher level of care that is available in the region in which you're traveling, most travel insurance plans will offer some measure of medical evacuation coverage if it's medically necessary. And basically, that's getting you transported from a facility that can't care for you to a facility that is able to provide a higher level of care to get you onward with your trip or, eventually save your life. Many plans also even include coverage for if someone does die while they're on their trip. So potentially to pay the expenses of repatriating their loved one back home. And again, having come from an assistance background, that's really something that nobody ever thinks of until they need it. But, most people wouldn't even know where to start. If I didn't do this, I wouldn't have, maybe a call to the State Department, but that's kind of where travel insurance would come in to potentially not only help with reimbursement of some of those expenses, but even potentially to help arrange it depending on the type of plan that you get. And then, some plans effectively they'll cover you from door to door. Other plans might be a little bit more limited, but again, it's going to be really based on the type of trip that you're booking, how much money you're spending, what you stand to lose if you have to cancel that trip, all of those different things. And again, knowing what other potential coverages that you might have through other avenues. A lot of people I hear say that, oh, I've got coverage through my credit card, or I've got coverage, say through my homeowner's insurance plan. And again, it's important to read the fine print because most of the credit card companies that I see, they do have some benefits that are available on through the credit card membership or what have you, but it's typically very limited. There might only be 2 or 3 reasons that you would be covered to get reimbursed for. And oftentimes that can be at a set limit. So no matter how much you spend on your trip, if you spent $50,000 on a luxury vacation, your credit card might say, oh, we're only going to cover you up to $5,000. So that's still a pretty significant investment that you could stand to lose, even though you had coverage through your credit card. Secondary to that would be, if you've got a medical emergency. Again, some of those do offer different types of reimbursement if you have medical expenses while traveling, but again, it's normally a very limited coverage and very limited set of circumstances that would potentially reimburse you for that. Then there's also, I know many coverages also include what they call common carrier accident and death coverage, so that if I always hate to say this out loud, but if there would be some sort of a plane accident or something like that, that would reimburse if there's a death to one of the travelers or something like that. And many of those credit cards do include that. But again, you're talking about, how much coverage is there? It's usually not very much. And kind of the same thing with lost luggage. There might be coverage through the airline if the airline's the one that loses your bags. But if you look at those contracts of carriage, or if you look at what a cruise line might offer in the event that they lose your bag and don't purchase their insurance, it's not very much. And, most people, and particularly if you're talking any sort of luxury travel or anything like that, most people aren't taking the same clothes that they go to do yard work in as they are to go on a luxury cruise. So you're going to have typically more expensive items in your bag and things of that nature. And so you may be a lot more limited in what potential benefits that you would have available. In addition to that, you've got some credit cards that will offer rental car coverage insurance, but others don't. So we've got some travel insurance plans out in the market that would also include automatic coverage if you rent a car while you're on your trip. Essentially, as long as you're not breaking the law and you're listed on the rental car agreement, that's something that can be automatically included on some travel insurance plans. So, if you're worried that you don't have enough coverage, travel insurance plans can also pick up additional types of, I'd say, non-traditional coverage or reimbursement while you're on the trip. What's driving your needs for insurance? So I kind of touched on this, and you'll probably hear me say it at least 3 more times in this presentation. Most people cancel their trips because of illness, injury, or death to one of the travelers. Nobody booked a vacation planning to cancel it. And what, one of my expressions in this business is life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So it's definitely one of those things where if you've got something unexpected that comes up, and again, you're in a position where you stand to take a loss on that investment, you definitely want to consider getting insurance coverage. In addition to that, most travel insurance plans will also include coverage for a family member. So like for me, I've got elderly family members, and sometimes it makes you a little nervous to say be traveling abroad or something like that when you know that there's the risk that something could happen. A lot of travel insurance plans would also include coverage if you get a parent that gets sick or something along those lines, have a family member get hospitalized, or I've even seen plans that have coverage for if you've got somebody planned to watch your kids and the babysitter gets sick and you have to cancel your trip to take care of your kids. I've seen insurance plans that'll cover things like that. And then you can see some of the others, natural disaster, pandemic. I do want to highlight that because there are quite a few insurances out there that actually don't offer coverage strictly because of a pandemic, which I think in today's market, that's something that's very important to let people know, that just a pandemic by itself isn't necessarily going to be a cover reason to cancel, but what could potentially be covered in that situation is if you've got somebody that in the traveling party that falls ill and has to be quarantined. Typically, most of the travel insurance plans that are out there will cover COVID and COVID-19 like any other sickness. So while it might not be covered just because there's a a pandemic in such and such country that I'm afraid to go, there may be coverage where, oh, I've tested positive for COVID-19, I can't take my trip, or something along those lines. In addition to that, you've also got weather's probably, I'd say the most second common reason that people cancel their trip. I know a couple of you mentioned being from the East Coast, so you all know about nor'easters and how those can impact people's weather and travel plans. Or in the, in South, in the Panhandle of Florida, it's always, what hurricane, and it's always funny to me because you can tell who's grown up and lived in Florida their whole lives and the people that just moved there 3 years ago, because the perception is very different on how people look at hurricanes and storms like that. But either way, there's still the potential for them to impact people's travel plans. So it's nice to have that coverage there that, if you scheduled a weekend at an all-inclusive resort in Florida and the hurricane comes through and you can no longer go, that's something that's going to be reimbursable under your travel insurance policy in most cases. There's also reasons that, like the big one that hit the news recently, Crystal Cruises went bankrupt. I mean, they were, luxury travel supplier, and a lot of people did business with them, and they just couldn't keep it going. So, that's something that most travel insurance plans will also include coverage for. And I mean, certainly there's restrictions, and it's important to take note of what your specific travel insurance policies covered reasons are. But I would say this list that you see right here is a pretty good representative of probably the most common ones that you see. The other ones that we tend to see a lot are job loss or change of employment, especially in this day and age, with the employment situation for, I think, pretty much every industry being what it is. That's something that's pretty significant, and we get a lot of inquiries about that. If my boss cancels my vacation, am I covered? On most travel insurance plans, probably so, as long as you've already had the time approved. And I mean, if I'm somebody's boss and I'm making them cancel vacation, I'm surely going to be willing to write a note to help them get their reimbursement back on their insurance. So just a few, different odds and ends are the most common reasons that we tend to see that cause people to cancel. Other reasons, we kind of touched on some of this, but reasons why you might purchase travel insurance: if you have to cancel or if you have to cut the trip short. And cutting the trip short, that's, I've left on my trip and I'm 3 days into it, and I get a call that something's happened back home and I've got to rush back home. So with trip interruption, that's going to still protect your investment. It's just going to reimburse you potentially for whatever you missed out on. So if I've got a trek that I was taking and I only got to take half of it, that's something that potentially could be claimed back and get reimbursed. So, it's bad enough to have your vacation ruined by life getting in the way, so to speak, but at least you don't stand the risk of losing that investment if you purchase travel insurance. Another really, really popular benefit that we're seeing in travel insurance these days is that second to last bullet point there: cancellation coverage for any reason. So some travel insurance policies have very few covered reasons that you can cancel your trip. I've seen some as low as 5. I've seen plans that have up to 40 covered reasons for cancellation. But the one that everybody really seems to be interested in is that cancellation for any reason. So basically what that means in the insurance world is I'm canceling my trip due to a reason that is not listed as covered in my policy. So maybe I've just decided that I don't like this particular itinerary and I've changed my mind, and it's, I'm too far along to get any reimbursement back from my travel supplier. So if my policy has cancel for any reason coverage, I can cancel my trip. And while I might not get 100% of my investment back, most plans generally would offer reimbursement anywhere from 40 to 75% of your investment back to you for whatever reason you decide to cancel. And like I alluded to, I paid claims for a while. And when we say any reason, we really do mean any reason, as long as you meet the requirements. And I don't know if you've seen some of just the general horror stories on TV, or one that comes up a lot: canceled weddings, or just any of those typical reasons, I don't like this person anymore, I don't want to go with them, that type of thing. Whereas if you didn't have insurance, you'd be losing that entire investment. In this case, you're at least going to get something back for the money that you've laid out for that trip. And I kind of touched on this already, but there are quite a few different travel plans out there. I think at last count, IMG by themselves, between our custom products and our off-the-shelf items, I think at last count, we were up over 700 different products. And then that includes travel accident plans. So what Myra had alluded to earlier, when she sells our IMG coverage, she sells our Patriot plans, which are travel accident plans primarily. And that's really going to be like, if you're, say, traveling just short term and want to make sure that you have medical coverage, you're not necessarily concerned about the trip cancellation benefits or anything like that, but you are worried if you get hurt, if you need a medical evacuation. Those travel accident plans tend to really focus more on just medical benefits, whereas the travel insurance plans, those are going to cover more of the anything that could go wrong while you're traveling, including medical benefits. And then you see also there are some package travel insurance plans. So those might be customized, specific to someone's trip. Like I know some of our partners do specific events. For example, they do an annual event or, an annual festival, party, whatever. So, we might be able to put together some sort of custom travel insurance package that's specific to their needs, because you don't necessarily want to offer, say, scuba benefits to somebody that's going on a ski trip, for example. So, again, there is a lot of diversity in terms of the types of travel insurance that are out there. And then you do also see periodically where, somebody's going to be taking, like, for example, a timeshare, and they're going to be staying at a location 3 or 4 times out of the year. An annual plan might be a better option for them, so that they don't necessarily have to worry about protecting that trip investment, but they still want to have all those other coverages available to them while they're going on the trip. A couple little bullet points or caveats that we want to talk about when it comes to trip cancellation, where the normal rules may not apply. So, for example, some policies do cover bankruptcy, but it may be a case of one travel supplier goes bankrupt and the other one just refuses to give, say, for example, I'm trying to think, Crystal Cruises is, I guess, my best example I can use of that. Crystal Cruises went bankrupt, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the people that also had airfare booked with their Crystal cruise booked it directly through Crystal. So, it's important where you might be able to recoup your losses for one element of travel. It might not be an option for another. So just, kind of want to point out some of those nuances. Well, okay, if my tour operator cancels my trip due to weather, they should give me all my money back. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the tour operator for the second half of your trip has that exact same policy. So it's very important, particularly in a post-COVID era, because a lot of the rules changed because of COVID, that, you're really making sure, especially if you've got somebody that is signing up for a particularly expensive trip, that they understand, what could happen to me if I have to cancel this trip and I don't have insurance. And that kind of leads right into the how much do you need? And again, it's really going to depend on what you're looking for. If you're just hopping a few states away to, maybe attend an event that's a weekend long and you mainly just want to make sure that you've got coverage if there's a flight delay or something like that, of course, you're going to want a more basic plan. But if you're taking an around the world cruise and you're spending $50,000, $60,000, and while you're at it, you've got some health issues that you might be a little worried might flare up while you're on that trip, the odds are you're probably going to want to get a bigger policy or a more comprehensive plan that offers more benefits. And really, it all boils down to just making sure that you look at the fine print, like it says right here, ask questions, and ask more questions, because, with there being such a wide variety of products to choose from, it's definitely important to make sure that, the issues that you're concerned about going wrong while you're on your trip are the ones that are being addressed when you buy an insurance policy. Definitely helps to, compare travel insurance rates where you can. I can tell you that within travel insurance in general, the products generally are, filed and approved by various regulatory entities. So a lot of the products are very similar, but it's important to look at, what benefits you're looking for to suit your needs. Most travel insurance policies do contain a free look period. And basically what that means is that they're going to let you buy the policy. And if you look at the policy and you're like, this is absolutely not what I thought it was, it's not going to cover the things that I'm worried about it covering, I can go ahead and cancel it out, get all your money back, fully, and not have to worry about there being any sort of a cancellation fee or anything like that. And most travel insurance policies do have that look period. I've seen it vary. It again depends on the insurer and it depends on the product, but typically anywhere from 10 to 30 days, they give you that chance to look at that coverage, make sure it works for you. Or, if you do find a better plan, so sometimes that happens. You're like, oh, wait, I booked this and I realized that, this plan would also cover in the event that my dog gets sick and I have to cancel my trip. So let me go ahead and get this one. That would perfectly be a reason I would cancel my trip. So, you want to make sure, again, you've got what covers the things that you're most concerned about happening. And I kind of touched on that. And again, I think it stands to drive the point home. The more you're willing, or the more you stand to lose if something goes wrong, or if you have to reschedule, it's definitely important to have that insurance in place, because especially if while you go on your trip, if something goes wrong, I've seen scenarios where you've got somebody that's traveling far away and something goes wrong and they're not even sure how to make an international call home. That can be pretty scary if you're in a foreign country and you're already not familiar with maybe the language, already not familiar with the customs, and then you can't even call home. That's scary. And, the nice thing about most travel insurance is that they've typically got some sort of assistance protocol that goes along with those policies that you purchase that can help navigate that stuff for you, because typically, the travel insurance folks, they're the experts. They're the ones that deal with the nuances and the idiosyncrasies that happen with travel all the time. Somebody that goes on vacation once every 3 or 4 years, probably not so much. They're going to panic. And at least, even if it's not something that's covered under the insurance policy, or even if there's no financial outlay for the person that's making the call, just sometimes getting that peace of mind to be put in the right direction and kind of guided on what to do. If, say, for example, if you lose your passport, I'm not sure, but I don't have every U.S. embassy in my speed dial, so you can figure that the average person probably doesn't either. And again, that's not even necessarily a travel insurance benefit, but most travel insurance companies will offer that as a service included with their policies. Now, getting to pricing, a few different things. Again, it does vary from product to product, but as you can see, usually the biggest factor is going to be age and terms of what it's going to cost to insure a policy. But there are some other factors too. If you're taking a very expensive trip, obviously it's going to be more expensive to insure that. Longer trips have that additional risk of something can go wrong if you're on a longer trip. So that might make it a little more expensive, or even other things like, adding a custom package, like upselling from a regular standard plan to a plan that has cancel for any reason benefits. I mean, certainly the cancel for any reason coverage exists, but if that's a benefit that you're concerned about needing on a policy, it's going to be probably at a premium. Some products also give you the option if you want to add car rental coverage, or if you're taking a trip and you're doing something, let's say you're climbing Everest, you might need a policy or to add on some additional coverage to make sure that you're able to climb at a certain altitude. Those types of things, many standard insurance plans won't necessarily cover that super risky stuff. But most anything that you want to do that's out there, you could probably find a policy to cover it. But again, it boils down to really just reading the fine print. And so when you are looking at, potential travel insurance outlays, the biggest thing is you want to provide as much information as you can. The main thing is, your trip details, not just how much you're spending, but sometimes where you're going. Your destination matters. If you're going to the Caribbean, where, relatively low risk of crime, popular tourist destination, some plans may rate that differently than what they would for somebody that's planning travel to, say, Afghanistan or something like that. So it really could be driven on a number of factors, as well as, if you're traveling in a group versus traveling as an individual. Some benefits some plans can even vary depending on when you booked that trip, because again, sometimes when you book that trip is important in terms of what benefits could be available to you. A lot of travel insurance plans have built into them what they call time sensitive benefits. And basically what that means is that if you don't purchase the coverage within a certain time frame after booking the trip, there could be benefits that won't apply to you, or other benefits that could be limited. The big one that I think most people ask about is like a pre-existing condition. So if you've got a pre-existing condition, there may be a travel insurance product out there that would waive that pre-existing condition, and so you'd be fully covered for it, but you've got to purchase that policy within a certain time frame in order to have that benefit available to you. So again, if it's something that you've got a chronic health condition or something like that, where you'd want to make sure you've got that coverage while you're on your trip, sometimes things like when I book my trip can be very important to that. The other pieces of the puzzle, like I said, I've kind of touched on some of this, but really just compare your policies, look at all the different options that are available. I always advise, especially if you're not accustomed to dealing with insurance, pick up the phone and talk to somebody and, ask the questions about what you're specifically worried about in the trip. The other piece of that would be before you go on the trip, it's definitely important to know what you're going to need if something goes wrong. So the biggest piece of advice that I always give to anybody, no matter what travel emergency they're in, get as much documentation as you possibly can, whether it's from the airline, whether it's from the doctor's office, whether it's the resort, because getting it right then and there when the event is happening is a heck of a lot easier than trying to go back and get that information once you're back home and settled and things of that nature. So really it's about painting a picture. You want to be able to show, if you have to file a claim, what happened versus what was supposed to happen, and the subsequent losses or financial expenditures that you had as a result of that. Now that you've selected your policy, I'm not going to read the slide, but you do have several different avenues of insurance that you can purchase. And I'm sure Myra would be happy to step in and offer her services as well. But aside from that, once you get the policy and get all your documents together, the only thing that's left to do is enjoy the trip. So I hope this was informative. I think that's pretty much it for the presentation. So I can see a lot of chats here. I haven't even looked at it.
Oh, they're all taken care of.
Okay.
What I would like to share is just two questions that came up a couple of times, in that with the cancel any time, if you purchase that with any of the insurance companies out there, my recommendation as somebody in the business is less is more when giving us the reason why you are canceling the trip. Don't give us reasons to do a little bit more digging. So if you want to cancel because of a bad hair day, just say bad hair day. If you got invited to go play Augusta National, just say I'm going golfing. Don't expand on the reason why you're canceling. And then the other thing is, Ray asked the question about when you should buy, and Courtney just touched on it. My recommendation is buy it, if you can, the same day you make your first non-refundable trip deposit, because again, different insurance providers offer different coverages based on the time that you purchase the policy. So you can call IMG, we can answer those questions. Again, Myra can answer those questions for IMG and other carriers that she offers in her business, but you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so you can't buy car insurance after you have an accident. So just my last little nugget before we open the door to Q&A is please buy your travel insurance as soon as you possibly can.
Okay, I'd like to say something about quarantine insurance because that came up in a question as well. There's a distinction. In the middle of the trip, if you contract COVID or any illness or any injury, that falls under a benefit called trip interruption benefit. That means if 7 days into a trip, the third day you contracted COVID and you lost 4 days of your trip or 5 days because you have to be quarantined minimum 5 days, you would be able to file a claim for the portion of the trip that you missed because you were laying in bed quarantined, and for the airfare that you now have to change because you might be coming back early or later, depending on the quarantine. That comes under always the trip cancellation and trip interruption plan. That's one type of interruption. But if you test positive at the end of your trip is over, you're packing your suitcases to go to the airport. That's not a trip interruption anymore because your trip is over. People get this confused all the time. Your trip is completed. And if you do test positive at the end of your trip, you have something under a benefit called trip delay. Now your trip is delayed and it's not the trip interruption, which is a lot more money that you have in your piggy bank. You have a smaller piggy bank under trip delay that will cover some of your expenses for meals, lodging, and sometimes for airfare, which can be limited to a certain amount. It's usually up to $500 to change your airfare. But you have to be aware that it's two different things. End of the trip is trip delay benefit, middle of the trip is trip interruption. Because of COVID and because of testing prior to leaving to come back to the States, if you were on an international trip, this caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. So I just want you to understand it's a major difference.
Agreed. And also call your travel insurance provider because they can explain the benefits to you specifically and actually can make notes on your policy because they will know that there will be an impending claim coming. So just a note there. And also, I want to back up to a question Cheryl asked about, who's likely more to pay and who pays faster. That all depends on if what we call in the business, we get a clean claim, which means we get all the documents exactly how we need them to what you are claiming. So if you have all the right doctor's notes, you have the right receipts, you have the right information that you can provide to us to do a process the claim, it goes very smoothly for all travel insurance companies. And so it's a matter of if we get the information correctly or not. So, and then it just depends on the specific company, on their payment plan. So, I know I worked at one of my competitors and they have the same ACH payment that we can just make right back to the credit card that was used for the policy purchased, that we can just refund the money right then and there. So clean claim is the big focus there, is make sure we have all the correct information.
Okay, Peter Tuttle says he's looking for a policy that will cover him if you're required to quarantine upon arrival. I have never heard of someone had to quarantine upon arrival. Are you telling me that the Cayman Islands is requiring that? My question to Peter.
You're muted.
I've never, ever, ever experienced where you quarantine upon arrival.
He's shaking his head yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is it the Cayman Islands that's going to quarantine you when you get there? For how long?
I'm not, I don't want to say, I want to say it could be up to 2 weeks, but it's off the top of my head from a week ago. And I'm
Wow.
assuming it's because they're just opening up. And I'm assuming it's that you take a quick test upon arrival at the airport.
Okay, so if you take a test and you test positive, now you're gonna have to be quarantined. That's if you
Yep.
take a test, right? So if you take the test and you test positive and you're quarantined, then that's considered trip interruption. You're interrupting your trip because you were sick the moment you got there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, and to kind of piggyback on what Grant did reference about the clean claims, I can tell you from my experience that it seems to be a common misconception with travel insurance. You know, most people are pretty spoiled. If you go to your doctor's office, you hand them your insurance card, you don't think anything about that again until you get either a bill or an explanation of benefits from your insurance company. Same thing with your auto insurance. You get in an accident, you know, the worst part for you, if you're not injured, hopefully, is going to be you have to get an estimate. And that's pretty much where your part ends. You know, the insurance agent or whoever sort of takes care of all that magic on their end, and you're fairly hands off. Whereas with travel insurance, it's a little bit different because depending on the reason, and like I said, there's policies out there that have 40 different covered reasons to cancel. The documentation that I provide for a weather delay is going to be drastically different than what I might provide for, say, my family member's illness to support my claim. And people don't always understand that, you know, they've got to provide proof to support what they lost. And so I think that's where some of the disconnect comes in with respect to clean claims. And I think it goes back to, you want to show people what actually happened versus what was supposed to happen, and you know what you're out of pocket because of that.
Let's see what else.
Any other questions? We're happy to, Myra and Courtney and I are more than happy to answer them live or on the chat.
Oh, I do want to address something because it's something that's absolutely going on right now. Airlines canceling thousands of flights. There is no insurance that I know of on the planet that will cover a trip delay due to an airline's ineptitude of managing their business. So for example, if they are short crew or they are short pilots, they should have been aware that that was going to happen way before it happened. I'm sorry, but I used to work for the airlines, so I have a background working with the airlines. They're not too smart. So that being said, there is no insurance that will ever cover you if you get to the airport and the flight is canceled because they were short pilots or crew. The only reason that for sure you're covered is if it's a weather delay, because the airlines don't have any control over weather delays, but they do have a control over staffing and crew. So I just want to let you know, because this is a big issue. I get calls and emails about this every day because people want to buy insurance about travel delay from the airlines when they arrive there. There is no coverage for that, period.
Myra, this is Dave Schonecker. I'm really glad you brought that up because with ski trips, that is something that a lot of our clubs have seen, especially over the last year, where, you know, they're canceling flights at the last minute, and, you know, the whole ski club is now, you know, caught hostage and showing up a day or two later and all this kind of stuff. But if what you're saying is no travel insurance will cover that kind of thing, that's an important message that we got to get out throughout the Federation and our various councils to everybody, because you're right, there's a lot of misunderstandings about that because I know in some situations I'm familiar with where people, you know, kept hounding tour operators saying, well, you got to get me the information I need for my travel insurance because of that cancellation, etc. And the tour operators are going to get caught in the middle sometimes, and there's nothing they can do.
I've had groups of skiers, you know, 35 people stuck. For example, I'm in the Virginia area, Baltimore Airport. And what you can't find with certain travel insurance companies is that if you go home and come back the next day, or, you know, they'll rebook you. So for example, this was with Southwest. Southwest took 35 people, told them they couldn't board the plane because the plane was not going anywhere, and then rebook them for 2 days later. If you rebook for 2 days later, that can be considered a trip interruption, and you can file a claim for the 2 days that you missed on your trip where you were supposed to be, for example, at Whitefish.
Okay, that's really important. That's a great comment. So, because that's what happens in many cases. Yeah.
Right. But if you go home and decide to stay home and you're not going back to the airport because you're upset,
Right.
you will get nothing back for anything. You'll lose
Right.
all your money.
If you decide not to go. Yeah.
Correct. You can't decide not to go when the airline has rebooked you 2 days later or a day
Yep.
later. You have
Yep.
to follow through. That's key.
Yep. Good information.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just, this is Joe Harvest. I just want to make sure everybody on the line knows that both Myra and Grant and Courtney's products are available as a benefit to the members of all of our ski clubs that are part of the Federation.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, one other thing, everybody knows about medical. IMG can tell me what they do. When someone gets hurt or injured when they're traveling or they're sick, you know that when you can go see any doctor to be treated, but you usually have to pay the bills up front and then you have to file a claim. Now with IMG, is there any time with IMG that you pay the provider directly? I'm just curious. I want to make sure.
IMG has an entire department dedicated to that very thing. Now, there are a whole lot of providers in the world, but one of the things that our medical team does, or our divisions of our medical team does, is they actually work specifically to contract with accredited facilities throughout the world. There's actually a few facilities, that I dealt with frequently when I did the assistance, where I was on a first name basis with some of these people. They would contact us, confirm the benefits, and send the bill directly to us, and the customer never saw anything. So we do have that capability. Obviously, it's not every provider, because really, they're under no obligation to take our insurance or not. But we would much rather them work with us whenever possible. We can also, if it's a case where something truly catastrophic has happened, we can also work and assist in placing what's called a guarantee of payment, meaning basically it confirms they've got insurance coverage to treat them for whatever's wrong. Which, I've seen hospitals that, want $50,000 to do an appendectomy surgery on the fly. I mean, most people don't have $50,000 laying around, but if our team can work with the facility and get them to accept our guarantee of payment, that makes everybody's life easier. So we do try to encourage that. And I think most of our competitors probably do too. We just do it better.
I just wanted to know, clarify.
Yeah, and again, you want to look at, it was mentioned on a slide, you want to look at secondary and primary as your insurance, with your insurance. So secondary means that the travel insurance provider would be the second person paying that cost. If we are primary, or any insurance provider is primary, they are the first payor of any cost. And the other thing is, call us immediately if you can. If not, have somebody from the hospital or a traveling companion call us, because then we can let our medical teams and our people start getting to work to take that, stress. And again, all travel insurance providers, if I work for Allianz, TravelX, Travel Guard, TripMate, Travel Insured, we would all say the same thing there, is call us immediately and let the travel insurance provider help you or help the insured get through the situation they're dealing with.
All right. Are there any more questions? Okay, I can't thank you guys enough, Courtney, Myra, Grant, for participating in this presentation. Certainly appreciate your time and effort. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa.
Thanks, James. Thank you, Myra, Grant, Courtney. Totally. Yes, Cheryl?
I'm sorry. Would you read Tim Dalton's question and answer it?
Oh.
I think it's important to do because it's about contact information for these people that have been so generous.
Yes, Tim is asking if to follow up on some of this information, how to get contact information for all three of you. And I was about to say that we are going to send out information, actually the presentation, PowerPoint and some talking notes to it. We will forward to you after we review it, after this meeting, make sure everything is in there that you would want to know, as well as this meeting has been recorded, and we will put it on our website, and I will forward it out to the councils probably next week, because I'm literally on vacation right now. But we will, within a week or two, get all this information out to you so you can share it with your councils. And we will include for sure that information. Actually, James, if you want to, you can send to the councils at Ski Federation email the information for all three of them, and that way people can have that ASAP.
I will get that out in the morning.
Is that good? Anybody else? Any last minute?
Want to say thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was
You're welcome.
extremely informative. I hope everybody else enjoyed it as much as I did, and I definitely learned a lot and a lot of good information, and we appreciate you being benefit providers and offering us discounts on both of your products through the Federation, and taking the time tonight to talk with us and share your information, your expertise.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and nice to meet you all.
Take care, everyone. Be well.
Bye. Good
Bye,
night.
thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, everyone. Thank you.
Stop recording.
Thank you, Joe. Let me find my recording.